about myself. So my name is Alok Shrivastava. I am co-founder of GoCrackIt. I have done my MBA from IIM Bangalore, and I have worked in management consulting in PwC, where I led multiple transformation projects, wherein I was leading a large team of 20, 25, 15 to 25 consultants. And then around 8 years back, I started I started GoCrackIt, wherein in this 8 years, I would have mentored more than 5,000 students, working professionals individually, and would have conducted hundreds of these kind of sessions. So that's about me. Now, just one more minute on which I'll just take one more minute to explain what is a case interview, and then we'll directly jump to case. So basically, a case interview is a business problem or business situation which is given to you in the interview to assess your problem solving skills. Okay. And generally, cases are open ended statement. Generally, in an interview, you'll get a case interview like, for example, that my company is losing profitability. What should I do? Very, very open question, right? And generally, they are inspired by real world situation. So let's say a recruiter is facing some problem in his or her business, or in his or her client's business, and they might take that as a reference to ask a question to see how do you approach, right? And in any case, approach is very important than the right answer. There may not be a right answer. Okay, how do you approach a problem, how do you communicate is very important. There are why case interviews are asked, because since a lot of technologies, economy, so many things are changing, there's a lot of uncertainty, and this uncertainty, you may not know what kind of problems you're going to solve in real world, and case interview gives you that exposure, that how do you solve a problem which is uncertain, how do you behave, how do you react in that. And that's why case interview becoming even more popular amongst the recruiters, because they want to check how do you solve a problem, how do you approach a problem when there's a lot of uncertainty. And so that's why cases are asked. The cases are asked to basically kind of evaluate some of these things. One is your problem solving skill, and there are certain elements in problem solving skills we will see in next slides in the case, that what exactly we or I mean by problem solving skills. But that is very important. Your tolerance for ambiguity. How do you behave? How do you make sense of ambiguity? How do you really communicate in that in that ambiguity is what they are looking at. How do you apply logic when there's a lot of ambiguity, when there is pressure to solve a problem, right? So that is what is being evaluated in a case interview, right? Another important characteristics of case is that it can be from any industry or any domain, right? Because uh, they are designed to measure your problem solving skills and not your domain knowledge. So don't worry if you get a case which is from a totally different industry, let's say an aerospace industry which you're not aware of, a food industry which you're not aware of. Because as I said, right, it is not to test your domain knowledge, your industry knowledge. It is to test your problem solving skills, your communication during ambiguity, your tolerance for ambiguity, those things, right? So don't get bogged down if a case is asked from any different industry, right? Now let's try to get into one case and try to understand how do you approach a case, and we will see it from a recruiter perspective. And I'll try to give a lot of hints, lot of things which recruiters expect you in a case interview. Okay, so let's see. So a very simple power like statement, like there is a power generation company which produce electricity, right? And it wants to enter African market. You need to evaluate and suggest whether it should enter the African market or not. That's the problem statement. It's a typical market entry case which you might expect, right? So how do you approach this problem? What do you do? Let's say this question is asked to you. What will you do? Tell me. Anyone? Anyone wants to tell me something? How you may want to approach this problem? How do you start? You can put it in the chat. You can tell by unmuting yourself. You can speak by unmuting yourself. But tell me, how would you approach this problem? Once this problem is given by recruiter to you, interviewer to you, How will you start? Anyone? Identifying the market size. Very good, Nikita. Excellent. Identifying the market size. Anything else? Anything else? So one is identifying the market size. See, what I would suggest is in any case interview, the first and foremost thing should be to make sure have you understand the problem correctly? Have you understand the context correctly? So even before getting into an approach or a solution, I would suggest that you start with clarifying the scope, clarifying the context, clarifying the problem itself, itself, right? Problem statement itself. So you maybe what you should start with is asking clarifying question in order to improve your understanding of the problem. So there is a step-by-step process I would suggest to follow for any case solution. Clarify, set the objective, structure your approach, analyze and recommend. First step should be clarify the problem. Have you make sure that you have understood the problem clearly, and for that you ask some clarifying question. So how would you start? The first thing is you paraphrase the problem. The first and foremost thing is you make sure that whatever you heard is correct, because a lot of time what happens, people have in a pressure of interview, they might have heard it wrong. So make sure that you have heard the problem correctly, and hence you paraphrase. What I understand is that is a power generation company which wants to enter African market, and I need to evaluate and suggest, is it correct understanding? You just do this small step, and that really helps recruiter or interviewer that this person tries to understand the problem clearly. Okay, and then you ask some clarifying question. What could be some of the good clarifying question for this case? What do you think? What clarifying question would you ask to recruiter in order to improve your understanding of the problem, in order to improve the understanding of the context of this problem? Anyone? Or you can put it in the chat, you can speak up. But what could be some good clarifying question? Anyone wants to take a shot at it? What could be some good clarifying question? So some of the clarifying question should be like this. And one of the most important clarifying question is, why do we want to enter African market? Very important. Very important is why? What is the business objective? Is it that we want to grow our revenue? Is it because there are some mines there and we just want to capture them and hence we want to enter? Or is it something else, right? Or is there a government regulatory pressure that I have to be in that market? Whatever. Why do we want? What is the business objective of entering in that market? That should be your first question. Second could be why African market? Which specific country in Africa are you evaluating? Are you evaluating the overall African continent, right? Why do you want? Why African market? Which specific country you want to enter? What is the existing business of this company? Where right now it lies in the value chain of power generation? Is it power generation, or does it also do distribution? Does it also do something else? Is it also into renewable? What is the scope of business right now this company has, right? So these are some of the good questions. Is there any constraint which I should be aware of for evaluating the market entry strategy, right? These are some of the good questions or clarifying questions you should ask. And the objective is that you're trying to improve your understanding of the context about the company, about who it is or which it is, and the objective, why does it want to do anything or anything specific in the problem statement. Like in this, the specific things is entering. Why does it want to enter? You are asking why it wants to enter. Or is it given the problem statement has mentioned African market. You want to understand more about which African market. African market is a very broad term, right? You cannot maybe have, there are hundreds of countries in Africa. You cannot enter in everything together, right? So you want to understand the specific of the problem, right? That's what you are doing in this step, and that's a very good step. From the recruiter perspective, they will really impress with some of these questions, and they say, okay, this person is someone who doesn't just jump to the problem to solve the problem. He or she asks questions to understand the problem and then only jumps. That's a very good step, right? Then you set the objective. Even before getting into structuring the problem, one small but very important step is that you make sure that you have understood what you are supposed to do in this case very clearly. You should ask, so you want me to evaluate whether we should enter African market or not? Is there any other objective? Do you want me to do something else, or do you want me to just evaluate whether we should enter or not? That's a very important question, because it helps you to have a focused approach. It helps recruiter to see you from that focused approach. It also recruiters or interviewers commitment. Now, as I said, right, a case interview is an open-ended statement. If you're solving just like that only without clarifying the objective, even the recruiter might be confused. He or she doesn't know what exactly he or she should evaluate you as against a target, right? So it's a very good point where you're saying, okay, let's come to a consensus or understanding that this is what I'm supposed to do. Yes, that's a very good step, I would say, in any case interview. Now you need to give a structure. How do you really what would be your approach, right? What would be your approach to solve this case? What would be your framework to solve this case? Anyone wants to say something around this? What could be a framework? What kind of framework you might want to use, or what kind of step-by-step process you may want to use to analyze whether to enter African market or not? Anyone? You can put it in the chat again. If you have to evaluate whether should I enter that African market or not, what all analysis will you do? What 3 to 5 factors will you look at? In simply speaking, when I say structure or framework, what I meant is, what are the 3 to 5 major factors would you look at before deciding whether to enter in this market or not? Anyone? So always think about 3 to 5 factors which can help you analyze this. Okay, so let's see. The step-by-step process of factors which I look at to analyze whether to enter African market or not are some of these. One, you should know why, the strategic why. Why do we want to enter in this market strategically? What is our strategy? What are our pain points because of which we wanted to enter the market? Let's say it is revenue, that we want to increase our revenue, and hence we are thinking that if we get into an African market which is usually underutilized or underserved, we might get more revenue and hence we can grow. So let's say your objective or strategic objective is that we want to grow, we want to increase our revenue. Then you want to understand the macro of that country or that continent, because you will, macro means, for example, what are the political situation there? What is the, if the political situation is unstable, I may not want to enter in a country, right? I may still look at Nigeria versus I may not want to get into, let's say, something like South Sudan or some other country which is under, or maybe in this case, maybe Venezuela is not in Africa, but that's the right example. That political instability is very important before deciding stability or instability. Economics, how the GDP of that country is it growing? Is it not growing? Right? Social, what is the social fabric? How are the people there? What are some of the social consumer trends? What people like there? Because we need to work with people there, right? Technology, is the electricity available? Is the internet available? Is some other technologies are available which can help us enter in this? What are the legal frameworks? Very important. In any country, let's say you enter and legally you cannot do certain things which hamper your business. It's very difficult. Let's say one of the implications could be that you cannot raise your tariffs beyond a point. It's regulated. Now that's the problem, right? You cannot, may not want to enter in a country where there are a lot of legal restrictions. And then environmental, how is the environment there? What are the environmental laws are there? So you need to understand macros of that country or that continent. I would say you start with the country to what will be the macros of that country to understand whether it is a good place to work in that country. Then once you understood the macros, you may want to analyze the market, the specific market. What is the size of the market? How big is the market? Whether it is growing or not? How many competitors are there? How difficult or easy it is to really compete in that market? Who are my target customers? So you're trying to understand more micro market reality for this particular decision, right? So you have done strategic analysis, you have done macro pestle analysis, you have done market analysis where you're doing market sizing, the growth of market, the competition. Which framework do you use to identify the competition? Anyone? You can say framework generally what all factors you look at when you analyze a market competition. Anyone? It's a very famous, well-known framework. Which framework do you use to analyze markets competition or industry competition? Anyone? You can Google it. Which framework do you use to analyze industry competition? And tell me. Right? So, to analyze the market competition, generally you use something called Porter 5 forces, right? Porter's 5 forces. So, I mean, if you know this, good. Even if you don't know, it's okay. Basically, ultimately, you need to understand how is the competition in that market, whether that market is big enough or not, whether it is growing or not, right? So that's the kind of analysis you'll do in market. And then you do financial analysis. How much investment is required? What is the ROI of that investment? If it is a long-term investment and it's a large investment, what is something called NPV or IRR of this market in this investment? Right? Or what is the break-even point, or what is the payback period of it? So you do basically financial, the return analysis. Let's say I have to invest 100 crore rupees. How much time I will take to recover this 100 crore rupees from the profits of this business? And then you do risk analysis. Very important in any big decision, you do risk analysis. What are the political risks? What are the execution risks? What are the project management risks? What is the technological risk? And how do I mitigate those risks? Very important, right? That's what you might want to analyze. And last and but not the least, the operational part of it, execution part of it. How do I enter? Do I do an M&A? Do I acquire a company? Do I do a merger with a company out there? Do I do a joint venture with that any company there? Is there anything we can do? Should I enter all alone? So how do I enter in that market? These are some of the step-by-step things you may want to analyze for any market entry case. Your strategy, why do I want to enter? Your macros of that country or that region, like what are the political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental aspects there? Are they favorable to us? Market, more macro. How is that market, that power market where I want to enter, whether the market is growing, what is the right now the size, what is the size next 5 years, what are the competitions, is it very competitive market, how many competitors are there, who are my customers, how are they, what do they prefer, right? So I might want to do a more market analysis. Then financial analysis, how much will be my ROI, what will be my payback period. Then the risk analysis, what is the risk, how do I mitigate? 1 minute. How do I mitigate those risks, right? And then how do I enter? Do I do an M&A? Do I do a JV? Do I do something else? Can I enter standalone? And this might be also linked with your policies. Let's say certain countries may not allow direct entry. You might have to create a JV with someone, right? So these are some of the things. Now, after this, what will happen? Till here, what you have done a structure analysis of the problem. Till here, you have shown the recruiter that you can structure an ambiguous problem. You can come up with a structure. You can ask right questions. You can structure the problem, right? Now, sometime what may happen, recruiter may end question in a case here and say, okay, I understood how to use structure. It's good. Some recruiter may want to also see your data analysis skill, your analysis skill. And for that, they might want to give you some data and want you to do some data analysis, some calculations, right? So let's see some data. In this case, let's say, and in this typical market entry case where you're entering in a market, a typical analysis would be given to you is market sizing. Can you calculate the market size? So let's say the market sizing activity is given to you, wherein you are given, let's say we are talking about Nigeria. So let's say the population of Nigeria is this much, 228 million. Per capita, electricity consumption is, let's say, 150 kilowatt hours. So kilowatt hour is nothing but your electricity unit. So we say now 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit. That is nothing but kilowatt hour. So let's say per capita consumption of electricity is 150 kilowatt hour per year. By the way, this is very less as compared to, let's say, India. India might have around 1200 to 1400 or even more now. US has 2400,000 kilowatt hours. So it's very less, but that's what it is because it is not so developed country. So 228 million is the population. Per capita electricity consumption is 150. Let's say the tariff, that price for 1 unit or per kilowatt hour is $0.1. Now you need to calculate the total addressable market. So when you multiply these three, you will get a total addressable market. So you will do basically 228 multiplied by 150 multiplied by 0.1. So you'll get a total addressable market. So let's see. So 228 into, first let's calculate total electric consumption. So 228 into 150. I have taken 228 to 200 just to round out. You can tell this recruiter I am rounding it down to make it easier calculation. And then you calculate and you found that total addressable market is $30 billion, meaning that the total amount of electricity which is sold in a year in Africa could be $30 billion. So this is called something called total addressable market, which is 3 billion. 30 billion is the electricity unit into the tariff, which is $0.1 per kilowatt hour. So 3 billion. 3 billion is the total addressable market in Nigeria. This is called total addressable market. Total addressable market is basically your biggest size of demand, which is 3 billion. Now, definitely you cannot, like, this is assuming that every person in Nigeria is being given the electricity, but that is not practical. You cannot reach to all the people in the country. And hence, there's something called serviceable available market. So the biggest size of market is total addressable market, which we have calculated as $3 billion. Now, serviceable available market, meaning what is the portion of this total addressable market in Nigeria, which anyone can practically approach and give electricity to. So assuming that market is of 60%, my total serviceable addressable market, the SAM, is 60% of 3 billion, which is $1.8 billion. Now what happens? This serviceable addressable market is the size of market which you can which anyone, including all the competitors and everyone, can reach out to. So that size is $1.8. You may want to also calculate how much you can achieve. So let's say there are 100 people. What is your market share? In initial 2-3 years, what will be your market share? Hence, how much is your obtainable market? The total addressable market is the biggest demand. Serviceable available market is people who you or anyone can reach, and serviceable optimal market where you can reach. What is your market share? So let's say your market share is 5%. So your SAM, serviceable addressable market, was 1.8, and you multiplied it by 5%, you get. So what you're saying is initial 1 or 2 or 3 years, you might get, or 3 years, you may get a revenue of around $90 million. Is the market size which you are looking at. So these kind of calculation may be expected from you, and depending upon that, they will see how you can analyze the data or you can calculate the data. So these are the steps of we have followed till now. We paraphrased and clarified the problem. We set the objective. We set the structure or the framework to analyze this market entry, and then we analyze data. In this case, generally in the market sizing, in the market entry case, you might get a problem analysis wherein you need to size the market. So you should understand the concept of total addressable market, serviceable available market, and serviceable obtainable market. And we identified that we can capture almost $90 million in 2 to 3 years when we enter this market. So that's the end of analysis. And then you get to recommendation where you synthesize whatever we discussed till now. You say that in order to enter African market, and we looked at Nigeria, we analyzed the macro market, we analyze certain parameters like macroeconomic situation, the market situation, the financial and the risk part of it. We also see whether to create a JV or to M&A. Then we also calculate the total addressable market, which was 3 billion. And in short term, we can capture a market share of 5%, which corresponds to almost $90 million in Nigeria. Then in recommendation, it is always a good idea that you just don't say plainly that this is the problem, this is the solution. You also recognize that whatever we are suggesting, it has some risk associated with it, and you have given due cognizance to that risk or that issue, and you are also telling how to mitigate, or at least you have thought through about that what could be mitigation strategy. Even if you don't tell this is the risk in this particular strategy, the recruiter may ask you a question, don't you think this is a problem in this? It is always great to show that maturity, that whatever recommendation you're giving, okay, we should enter Nigerian market because it's a big market, we can achieve $90 million in next initial 2-3 years. However, before we enter, we need to thoroughly analyze the risk associated with the political and macro situation in Nigeria. Because I understand that African being a underdeveloped country and it may not be politically stable, we should hence find ways to mitigate those risks. Maybe we should have better political relationship. We should have better tie-up with the local players and local parties so that there's no disruptions because of political issues in our market entry. So the idea is you recommend, you synthesize whatever you have done, you give the data, whatever you analyze, and then you recognize, acknowledge some risk and give some mitigation strategy to avoid those risks. Even if you don't do, a recruiter may ask you. So this is a step-by-step process, which is what a recruiter is expecting you to do, right? And hence, I would say that, this video we will share in YouTube also, and you can go through it. And there are a lot of other videos in our YouTube channel, GoCrackIt's YouTube channel, around cases and guesstimates. You can go through them. But what my point is that follow a step-by-step process. Nobody's expecting you to solve the problem. To summarize, listen carefully, paraphrase the problem. Do not jump to solve the problem. Show your approach. Take interviewer's hint. Interviewer will give you some hints because he or she also wants you to succeed. Think aloud. You might be stuck. Think aloud to show your understanding. It is okay to get stuck. Do not give up. There is some material here which I have just listed it out here. You can go through it. The links are also there, so you can go through them. To read them. And we also do career guidance, one-on-one mentoring sessions, where you can connect with industry mentors to get career guidance or resume reviews or mock interviews, right? We also have a lot of ready-made, preparation material on consulting and guesstimate, where you can go through them also. You can explore them also. Keep in touch. You can connect me. You can follow us in this. You can connect me in LinkedIn, and we can interact there as well. Thank you so much, and all the very best. This is my LinkedIn ID. I'm just pasting it here, just in case if you want to connect. Okay, thank you so much for everyone for joining in and patiently hearing. If you have any doubt, let me know. I'm really happy to solve those doubts. Any doubts? Any questions? You can ask me any question if you have. Okay, great. So if there are no questions, thank you so much once again, and all the very best. Keep in touch.